idea for this board to be here and reinstate these positions, all the positions, because regardless of what else is going on, we need these people. This IT director position, which is suddenly open, we need to keep that, we need to fill it. 3 people in IT can swim, 2 of us is just gonna be drowning. Thank you.
I'm handing out some sheets, there's what I wanted to say, but I'm limited to 3 minutes, and then there's some financial information on one of the positions here, Erin. So, my name is Rosemary Schmidt. I worked for Rusk County for approximately 36 years. I retired as finance director. I had attended the November 14th Personnel Committee meeting where Personnel Committee had an item on the agenda to reinstate the 6 eliminated positions they had previously eliminated at their October 10th meeting. I apologize, I'm quite emotional about this. Several members of the public, including myself, spoke in support of reinstating these eliminated positions, but our comments apparently fell on deaf ears. I stayed for the entire meeting. What I heard during this meeting made me very angry. The Human Resource Director, Ashley Goodis, gave her monthly report. During the last month, there were some voluntary vacancies that the Personnel Committee and/or Administrative Coordinator could have reviewed and discussed eliminating instead of the 6 positions with existing employees in them. They knew there were 2025 budget cuts needed, and they apparently chose to ignore the possibility of eliminating one of these vacant positions. In my opinion, if there needs to be a reduction in personnel, the reduction should be done through attrition, not eliminating positions held by long-term dedicated employees. Did the Personnel Committee even review the job description of the jail account specialist before making the decision to eliminate the position? This position deposited a total of $97,405, which are on those sheets that are going around there, in 2023. And to date, in 2024, $101,321. Without this position, who is going to bring this revenue into the county? The person holding this position has been a loyal county employee for approximately 25 years and is the most cross-trained administrative employee in this department. And this is how the Personnel Committee and this board chose to treat that loyalty. One of the last positions I would have chosen to eliminate would have been the IT director. IT support is extremely important to the county as a whole, but most especially emergency services. No one knows the IT department better than Jim Bugney. Before he became IT director, he was a much respected law enforcement officer. It is my understanding that there also is currently an interim highway commissioner, not a permanent one. So the county does not have a permanent highway commissioner to run its highway department, and the Personnel Committee wants to eliminate the highway blacktop foreman position. So the county has a highway department with no permanent highway commissioner and a blacktop plant with no experienced person to run it. If there are cuts that need to be made to personnel due to budget constraints, I suggest that you reinstate the eliminated position and use the year the county board gave you, I'm talking to the Personnel Committee here, to take the time to make informed decisions. But, thank you for your time.
Good evening. First off, I would like to thank the members of this board here for their support at the November meeting, adding back into the 2025 budget for the positions that were eliminated. And tonight I ask you to please vote yes to reinstate the affected employees to their positions. In 1983, when I was hired by Rusk County, I was told we were one of the poorest counties in Wisconsin. And in 2022, when I retired, people were still saying Rusk County is one of the poorest counties in Wisconsin. Well, I agree that financially we may be poor, but Rusk County is rich and blessed with all the resources available to the citizens that live here. Many people move to Rusk County as a stepping stone. They work for a while, get their experience, build their resume, and they move on to make more money. They don't really give 2 shits about Rusk County. But these are not the people who I'm referring to, as they are not committed to our county. The employees whose jobs are being eliminated are the dedicated and hardworking employees I am referencing. There are many hardworking people employed in Rusk County. that have the intention of raising a family and making a career in our wonderful county. They become involved with our local nonprofit organizations. They volunteer at many other organizations, and we are blessed with them who donate countless hours to keep Rusk County great, a county with a population of less than 15,000. That's what makes Rusk County great. If you didn't attend the November personnel meeting, I'd recommend you watch the video. These men could not come to an agreement to reinstate these positions. And yes, there were some disagreements, just a few, between the personnel members, but as the meeting moved along, they were throwing out some ideas how to create a policy on employee reductions when needed. They discussed how the county got to this point, that maybe this should have been worked on several years ago. They also spoke about the private sector, the public sector, and the government sector. While Rusk County is not a factory, nor are we barren county, these men were brainstorming to come up with a plan that can be best for Rusk County. This will take time and hard work, but can be accomplished. I believe the gradual reduction of a workforce by the employees leaving and not being replaced, rather than by being laid off, is a step in the right direction. Of course, the board, along with department heads, will need to consider whether or not such employees are essential or if the duties can be combined or eliminated. You were elected by the residents of Rusk County. Some are family, friends, neighbors, and they put their trust in you that you'll do what's best for Rusk County, its employees and citizens. Please vote yes to the resolution on the reinstatement of positions previously eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 3. Any more public comment?
Oh, go ahead.
I don't have a lot to say, Aaron Webster from Bruce, but we knew these were very personal cuts to some of these 6 people, and we were right. We proved that right yesterday. It's shameful what you guys are doing. It's shameful what the personnel committee did the last time they met when they should have reinstated. You guys have a job to do. You know what's the right thing to do. Going after departments and specific people because of budget is wrong. And you guys are doing this completely the wrong way. I am so angry at what happened yesterday, and you all should be too.
Hello, I'm Denise Schimmer. I was at the last personnel meeting also. I spoke about the 6 employees that have been treated so unfairly. These employees have done nothing wrong. It's just such an unfair way to decide how to fix the finance shortage. Would you like someone in your family treated this way? No matter how long they have worked in their department, it didn't seem to matter. My grandson is Ashton Plazda. He's worked in maintenance for the last 4 years, and he's been there longer than anyone in his department. They go through so much help. They're either fired or quit. And Tom Thorson is a good friend of mine, and Gary Schultz threatened him. That's the only reason he retired. He wasn't even ready to retire. He thought all you people wanted him gone, so he turned in a letter of resignation. And then after that, the day after Tom left, Ashton was demoted to janitor. He was hired as a maintenance technician by Andy Alvarado, and then he was demoted to a janitor because Gary did not like Tom. So he took the punishment. And then he had reapplied for a maintenance technician and thought he was called up to be promoted, only to be told that he was losing his job. It's just, I just feel there's gotta be a better way to treat people than what is going on here. These are our neighbors, our friends, our family. There's gotta be other ways we can cut. I guess that's all I have to say.
Any other public comments?
Thank you.
Good evening, board members. I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask is, how do we decide when we have made these cuts? We took people like Alice Mill and ones that have been here for so long. And, what's it gonna cost to retrain new people to replace these ones when we do get them? I'd like to see them all reinstated if possible. It could be. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Any other public comment? None being heard, public comment is closed. Okay, the resolution. The resolution that we've got has been changed, amended to a new resolution. Everything's the same except for the IT side of it. That employee is no longer with us. So we'll be talking about the same thing. So, is there a motion to bring the resolution to the floor?
Explain what the difference is in
The difference is the IT's been taken out. Otherwise, everything else is the same.
Okay, that's the reason that the closed session is on there. Anybody wants a further explanation on that? And that, as of yesterday, he's not here. We can go back into the closed session to discuss that. That's why the closed session got put on yesterday.
Good.
I would like to know a little bit more about what that all was about yesterday. Okay, no idea. Why I recommend a closed session.
You making that motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Schneider, go in closed session, is there a second?
Motion by
Second by Mr. Aaron Bettis.
Okay, so go ahead and read the whole thing.
Closed session. Vote to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85 parallel, or parallel parent C, for considering employment promotion, compensation, and performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the government body has jurisdiction or exercise responsibilities, and Wisconsin Stats 19.85 parallel parent F, considering financial, medical, social, and personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, primarily considering the specific personnel problems or the investigation of charges against the specific person, except where Part B applies, which is discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data, or involved in such problems or investigations. To wit, employment status of the position previously eliminated on October 10th, 2024 due to budget constraints. What? Now we can vote.
Not even, you don't want to go into closed session? Okay, good. If you think about it.
Okay, so we're back open in open session. Back to resolutions. Is there a motion and a second? Resolution. The second resolution up on the board there.
So there's a revised resolution that is different than your packet. That is the one that's on the screen. The only difference is it removes the IT director position. Okay? Is there a motion on the floor to adopt the revised resolution, which removes the IT director, which is currently on the screen?
Say that again, please.
Okay? It would be in order for somebody to make a motion to adopt the revised resolution, which is on the screen, which is the same thing that's in your packet, except it removes the IT director position so that you're only reinstating 5 people, not 6.
Motion by Alec Hampton, second by Mike Russell. Any more questions? If not, let's vote on it.
Does anybody want to discuss that?
Anybody want to discuss it? I think the horse has been dead for several months now. If not, let's vote. Yes, passed by majority. All right. moving on.
I would sit here for sure.
Yes, Tom.
I thought the motion was to revise.
Yes, ma'am. Amen. I don't know if she doesn't.
Revise this resolution to remove the IT director from it.
Yes. There was one, there was one on the board.
Okay.
Not the one in our packet.
So are we gonna vote on this now? We said we were voting on revising the resolution to remove
The
the
motion
IT.
that was made was to adopt the revised resolution that was on the board.
Okay, I misunderstood that then, and my vote was, my vote is not accurate.
Duly noted. Discussion provided by Wisconsin County Association with Sarah Gruber, Kristoff, and Andy Phillips. Training topics,
No, it's you.
relationship between the administrative coordinator and the board.
I mean, do we have a clicker for the PowerPoint? If not, we have one.
Sarah, can I have yours? Yep.
All right, good evening, everybody. Great to be back. It was about 6 months ago that we started the conversation about roles and responsibilities in county government. And tonight is gonna be more of a deeper dive into roles within Rusk County government. I'm Andy Phillips, by the way, in case you don't remember. Sarah Diedrich from W stays with me to basically agree with everything that I say. And so that's what Sarah's job is. You're supposed to laugh at that. Absolutely. And so, in conversations with your board chair and some of you all over the course of the past 6 months, asking questions about Rusk County government, how it's organized historically, how it's operated, what the committees of jurisdiction do, what the role of the administrative coordinator is, what the role of the HR director is, and so on. I thought, it would be a good opportunity to have everybody in one room like we have here to ask questions and figure out, going forward, how do we want to conduct ourselves from a governance perspective and an organizational perspective as Rusk County government. So that's what tonight's discussion is designed to be. I don't feel the need, unless you really want me to rehash everything that we discussed at the end of June. There's no point in doing that because we just talked about this 6 months ago. So I'm gonna give a brief overview and then we'll dive into some of the questions. And I've designed some questions for you all, and I take no position on anything. I take no position officially on whether you ought to have an administrator, an administrative coordinator, what the administrative coordinator's job description needs to look at. I have no personal position on any of that. What I am here to do is to hopefully help facilitate a discussion about how things ought to be run within Rusk County government. And so that's what tonight is designed to be. You can disagree with me, debate me, ask questions of me, whatever you'd like throughout the course of this meeting, and hopefully it generates some thoughts and some discussion on the part of the board about how we most efficiently deliver services to the taxpayers in Rusk County, because that's the ultimate responsibility that this board has. We need to efficiently deliver vital services to the citizens that rely upon those services. So, again, I want to ask the question, whose job is it? What is our current organizational structure? Whose job should it be? What should the organizational structure look like? What do our committees do? And then I want to end with a bit of a teaser, if you will, about county board rules, because we touched on this at the end of June, but we really didn't get into depth. The Counties Association has done a lot of work on this whole concept of board rules over the course of the past year. Released some template board rules toward the end of September that guide counties in the discussion as to what board rules should look like. And so we'll end with a discussion of board rules in Rusk County. So continuing the discussion with forms of county government, we know that there are 3: executive, administrator, administrative coordinator. We know what the map in Wisconsin looks like. We know what the migration pattern has been over the course of the last 20 years. We've seen many counties move from an administrative coordinator position into the administrator position. We know that there are several counties out there with administrative coordinators that have a dedicated position, administrative coordinator like you have here in Rusk County, and there are other counties that essentially have administrative coordinator position roles filled by another position within the county, whether it be the clerk, whether it be the finance director, whether it be the HR director, and whatnot. And so there are a variety of different ways that you can organize yourself as Rusk County, and the question for you is, are we organized the right way, and do we need to maybe take a look at how we're organized to, again, more efficiently deliver services to our citizens? 5918, that's the statute that deals with county administrator. I will tell you that this is the cleanest form of governance within Wisconsin county government. That's not my opinion, that's fact. The reason it's fact is because we have a specific statute that delineates the role and the responsibilities of the county administrator. And so you have the option to transition to county administrator like many other counties around the state have done in the last 20 years. The county administrator has a statutory responsibility to coordinate and direct all administrative and management functions of the county government that's not vested by law with other officers. The county administrator appoints, removes, and supervises department heads subject to this board's confirmation. The department head supervises the employees within the department, but the department head reports to the county administrator. The board's role is that of a legislative body, performs advisory and policy-making functions within Rusk County government, should you move to an administrator model. And so again, when we look at the county administrator in 59.18, the duties are very well laid out. In many ways, the administrator model is very similar to the executive model in function, but the administrator is not elected by the people. The administrator is appointed by this board, and the administrator serves at the pleasure of this body. So at any point, if you deem the administrator's conduct and performance to be unsatisfactory, you have the ability to remove that administrator from his or her position. So when I say it's the cleanest form, I think that it creates the best opportunity for accountability between this board and that position that are entrusted with the responsibility for the operational functions within Rusk County government, and it creates an opportunity to get the best of those people or person in that position. Again, that's not a knock on the executive form, it's not a knock on the administrative coordinator form, but based on statute, this is the cleanest and clearest form of government in terms of roles and responsibilities. Then we have the administrative coordinator statute. And unlike 59.18 that deals with administrative coordinators are responsible for coordinating all administrative and management functions of county government not otherwise vested by law in boards or commissions or in other elected officers. That's it. That's all the statute says about the role of administrative coordinator. And so we also know that 59.03 of the statute says that we have the ability as Rusk County to define what this administrative coordinator position looks like. And you've done that. You've done that with a job description for your administrative coordinator. You've done that through resolution and other formal and informal action by this board and its committees in giving direction to your administrative coordinator. That's the ability that you have under 59.03 to define what this position looks like. And so again, I have no personal opinion on whether you ought to be an administrator county or an administrative coordinator county. All I would respectfully suggest is that whatever model you choose, we clearly define what the roles and responsibilities of that position look like. I think that's very important, all right? So I asked the question, and this is not just for Rusk County, this is for all counties. If you're an administrative coordinator county, what does this position look like? As I mentioned before, different counties do it different ways, and we have very little statutory direction on what this position actually looks like. But again, the better we are able to define it, the more clarity we have in roles and responsibilities within the county, the more consistency we have in terms of decision-making throughout the county, and frankly, it's less burdensome for the board and the committees to do what they need to do because they are focused on the policy-making function of the board and focused on the accountability function. In other words, making sure that the administrative coordinator or the administrator is doing his or her job. All right, again, the board, if you look at chapter 59 of the statutes, serves a legislative function. And so the reason we want clarity in roles and responsibilities is to make sure that we don't have confusion about whether the board is acting in a legislative capacity, making policy, adopting resolutions, adopting ordinances and amending those ordinances, or if the board is acting in an operational capacity in terms of giving actual advice and oversight direction to a department head. That you're not gonna find that responsibility for the board in chapter 59 of the statutes. It doesn't exist. So again, if we have clarity with rules and responsibilities, we know whose job it is to get something done. All right, as I mentioned before, we want, as a county board, to be regarded in the community as visionaries, all right? That means that we have the foresight to adopt meaningful policy that is going to impact the citizens. We also have the ability to hold staff accountable to carry out the policy vision that we create. Those are our two roles. We adopt policy and we appoint the agents charged with carrying out that policy, and those agents serve at our pleasure as a board. Our committees assist in the policy development process. Again, if you look at chapter 59 of the statutes, there's nothing in there about committees serving in an oversight capacity over a particular department or function of county government. I will say that there is one exception out there. It's in chapter 83 of the statutes, and that's with the highway committee. And the highway committee has an operational function in counties that have administrative coordinators. I think chapter 83 was written a very long time, well, I know it was written a very long time ago. And so the state, from a Department of Transportation perspective, wanted to make sure that we were interconnected with our highway systems throughout the state. So they wanted one person or group of people in charge of the county highway system. That's why in chapter 83, we have a lot of operational responsibility vested with the county highway committee in those counties with an administrative coordinator. Specifically though, in chapter 83, it says that if you have a county executive or a county administrator, that highway committee flips. It has no operational responsibility. It is just focused on policy as it relates to administration of the highways throughout the county. If we look at the function of administration, the department heads and staff, it's incredibly different than the function and the responsibilities that vest with the county board. Department heads, staff, our administration, they're responsible for the implementation of policy, which requires a shorter term view. They're not visionaries unless we tell them to be visionaries. They're focused on day-to-day operations. Their job is related to the smaller functions. They address the individual issues, and this is important. They're practicing a profession. they've devoted their career to working in the area in which they work, all right? So that's different than what we have as it relates to the board. So when we think of staff's role, their responsibilities, they also have two responsibilities. They have an obligation, not a choice, they have an obligation to carry out the policy direction that this board establishes, but they also have to give this board the information necessary for the board to make an informed policy decision, all right? They don't make policy unless you authorize staff to make policy. So what happens when we blur the lines, when we don't have adequate understanding of roles and responsibilities within a county's organizational or governance structure? We have a lot of time spent on trivial matters. Trivial meaning that they are not necessarily unimportant. Trivial meaning that they are matters that are better taken care of or disposed of in the day-to-day function of county government. We as a board have to read reams of documents to get up to speed to make informed decisions about the minutia that we are required to comprehend and make decisions on. We have long-running meetings that really we walk away saying, I don't know what that meeting really accomplished, but I was here for 4.5 hours. We have committees that serve as window dressing for what staff wants to do because they have an oversight responsibility. We have county boards meddling in administration, administration meddling in county board affairs. We have reactivity versus proactivity, a visionary. The legislative body of Rusk County ought to be known as proactive, not reactive. And so again, if we blur the lines of distinction between policy and administration, we get into the area of reactivity as opposed to proactivity. And then the final point is really important. No incisive way to evaluate the county executive, the county administrator, or the administrative coordinator. What do we mean by that? Well, if we are always as a board or a committee of the board stepping in and doing the job that's necessary to get the job done, how is it that we can complain that our administrator, our executive, or our administrative coordinator is not doing their job? We're the ones who are usurping their authority and taking care of getting done what needs to get done. And so, again, if we blur the lines that distinguish policy making from administration, we run into a laundry list of problems. I have no particular insight as to whether any of these items on this list apply to Rusk County, or if all of them apply to Rusk County. I'm telling you, based on my experience in dealing with the 71 other counties in this state, these are the issues that we have seen, where we have seen the whole governance structure collapse and create problems. And it leads to what you see on this list. So if we look at the organization chart again, and this is oversimplified, I get it, but with the county administrator form, based upon 59.18 of the statutes, we've got a very clean organizational chart. With administrative coordinator, it's not so clean. And remember that you have the ability under 59.19 of the statutes and 59.03 to define what it is that your administrative coordinator is going to do. So different counties do it different ways, and you have arrows that go all over this organizational chart. When I take a look at your ordinances and I take a look at your administrative coordinator job description, again, it's just based on my review of those documents. I'm not here to understand exactly what Ms. Heath does, but I look at what your administrative coordinator is asked to do, and I see department heads that report to committees. I see department heads that report over to the board chair. I see an administrative coordinator that reports to your board chair. I see an administrative coordinator that reports to your board in some circumstances. It's confusing as heck. I did not have a clear understanding of exactly what the reporting structure in Rusk County government looks like. And if I can't understand it, are we certain that you all understand it, and all the department heads understand it, and all of the staff understands it, that your administrative coordinator understands it? When's the last time we've had a discussion about our organizational chart and whether we need to take a look at this and then codify, whether it's through policy, ordinance, or otherwise, exactly what our organizational chart ought to look like? And so we have one big question, in my mind it's one big question. Rusk County is a complex organization with about 281 employees, based on what I saw, about a $20 million budget. That's a sophisticated organization. If you look at the services that Rusk County delivers to the citizens, it is incredibly complex. So the question is what organizational and governance form is going to best serve all of the stakeholders who rely upon Rusk County government for those services? That's the one big question, alright? So let's take a look at briefly what we've got for a job description for administrative coordinator. This is directly from the job description. Operational oversight makes day-to-day operational decisions within established policies and procedures at the direction of the county board chair. Alright, I'll get to my points in a moment. Research and recommend solutions for administrative and operational problems to the county board. Implement policy put forth by the county board. Attends committee meetings to offer advice on various topics that may arise. And so, looking at this, what is operational oversight? What does that term mean? Do we all have a common understanding of what we are asking our administrative coordinator to do as it relates to operational oversight? And when you look at operational oversight as it's described in this job description, what sort of independent judgment is involved? That's a key skill that is required, according to your job description, of your administrative coordinator. But is there any independence reflected in this position description? I really didn't see any. Your administrative coordinator makes day-to-day operational decisions within established policies and procedures at the direction of the county board chair. What statute provides your county board chair with the authority to make operational decisions? It doesn't exist, all right? So I see a bit of a disconnect here. We've got a county board chair that's giving direction to the administrative coordinator to make day-to-day operational decisions. It's a bit of a disconnect. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. How is policy implemented? We're asking our administrative coordinator to implement policy put forth by the county board, yet every single decision your administrative coordinator makes has to be at the direction of your board chair. So how is the administrative coordinator supposed to successfully and meaningfully implement any policy that this county board puts forth? So I asked the question, why is, quote, the ability to supervise, organize, manage, select, and evaluate department heads and other staff a required skill on the job description? That's what it says. Because if you look at what you're asking your administrative coordinator to do, I see a disconnect between what you're asking that administrative coordinator to do and the required skills, all right? There really isn't a lot of independence that resides within your administrative coordinator. Why do I think that that is a problem, or could be a problem, something you ought to explore? Well, again, that's where we see a blurring of the distinction between policy and administration. Because if the administrative coordinator does something that this board disagrees with, the administrative coordinator just says, well, I was doing it at the direction of the board chair. And the board chair is going to say, well, I expected her to exercise independent judgment. That's one of the required skills on the job description. Do we have a clear answer as to who created the problem in the first place? No, we don't. And so again, respectfully, I would suggest that maybe we take a look at what it is that we are asking our administrative coordinator to do, take a look at what we are asking our board chair to do, and make sure that we clearly distinguish between the role of the policymaking branch of Rusk County government, the board, and administration within Rusk County government. We look at ordinance 2-192 of the board rules, and we look at, in particular, the role of the committees. And we look at subsection 10 under subsection D. It says that when the county hiring, promotion, change of status, disciplinary action, termination, or other county personnel actions may be anticipated, the committee is responsible to consult the county's personnel handbook, follow established county procedures, and involve the personnel committee as appropriate or required. So each of the committees has independent authority and responsibility as it relates to these functions that fall within the jurisdiction of a particular committee, may consult the personnel committee when appropriate or required. I'm not quite sure when it would be required, and I'm further confused as to when it would be appropriate, but nowhere does it say that the administrative coordinator is involved. Nowhere does it say that your HR director is involved. And so again, the committees are the ones that are making these very important decisions. How do we evaluate those decisions and who's responsible for those decisions? How do we ensure that there's continuity between what one committee is doing and what another committee is doing? Again, respectfully, I think that this is an opportunity for us to ask those questions and how do we create a better system, if you will, to ensure that type of continuity. How many committees does the board currently have? Does anybody know? I heard too many. It starts with a 2. That's good. Do we even know how many committees? See, I don't know. I was hoping that one of you all would know, since it's your committee structure. If it takes time, that's a lot. I know there's a lot. I saw the list, I just didn't count them all. How many committees should there be? There's no magic number. I don't have a number. I can't tell you that the ideal committee number is 7, 9, 5, 8. It's up to you. But the fact that we don't know how many committees we have, the fact that we don't know the form and function of each of those committees, the fact that we've not given thought to how many committees there ought to be, the fact that we haven't discussed how we ensure continuity in terms of the actions that the committees are supposed to take, just tells me that maybe that's a discussion that the board ought to have, all right? So, let me pause there, because I've been speaking for a while and said a lot. So I wanna find out reaction, thoughts, comments, questions. Chair Caleb, if you wanna interject, you were very, very talkative with me in talking about this, so don't be bashful. Feel free to chime in here. But let's have this discussion, because I'm here to hopefully facilitate what you all will walk away saying, boy, I feel better about organization, where we're heading, what direction we're heading in. Go ahead.
I'm new to this board, very new, but I'm wondering, who is over this board? Who is our boss? Who do we answer to? I mean, there's 19 of us. Us, okay. All right, but we make some decisions. Seems as though we should have somebody up above so that we can make recommendations to go to with everything, all the information we have. But I don't know that, I feel that I'm capable of making a lot of decisions that maybe we make. I don't know what all these departments actually do. I think we should have a monthly meeting, and every month just have a department come and talk for 15 minutes and let us know what they do and how things are going. But I had no idea everything that IT department did. And how could I vote?
We actually did that.
We did what?
Several years ago.
Oh, well, I'm new, so, but maybe we should
Whatever
vote.
reason somebody decided not to do it anymore. But we had a presentation by every department head. They explained whatever statutes they were operating under and gave a presentation to the full board. I think we spent a whole day, a couple of days.
Well, it'd be nice just to have a
We didn't have lunch.
15-minute review.
But we did that several times.
Okay. Well, I didn't know, and I don't know a whole lot yet.
On your organizational chart on there, you had committees reporting to the board. I've only been here a few months too, but I don't see that happening. I mean, you know, very little what's going on in these committees. I mean, you read the minutes, you know, that you get an email, but you don't really know what they're doing, what's going on, particularly, you know, with the committee. So I don't see that being followed, if that's correct.
Well, the committees don't necessarily report to the board. As a matter of course, they are a body, a subunit of the county board, but you can have a mechanism, and many counties do this, where each month the committee will distribute the minutes from their previous meeting to the entire board, and there's opportunity at the county board meeting for people to ask questions of what transpired in the committee meeting. You could do that if that's what you decided to do as a board. That gets a bit more into the board rules that we would discuss on a different date, that's fine, but you could certainly have that type of structure.
But I understand what Mr. Moore's saying there. I'm struggling with that, because when I first came on the board, when I was new, it was kind of the same way, lost, but they give us a computer. wanna know from information, get in that computer.
Right, I agree, the minutes are on there, I mean, I read them, you know.
And I look up stuff, I go out beyond the computer, and you have to look at a lot of stuff. You have to have the will to actually sit there and look it up. So, I've heard that several times, that they're unfamiliar with what's going on in the county. Well, again, we have a computer, the county gives you, you have to open it and follow along, so.
I realize that, but there's still things that go on in the committees that you don't see in the minutes.
You have to call and ask someone that. The information's out there, trust me, I did it all myself too, and I kinda was riding solo for a while myself. And I just learned that if you want it, you're gonna have to find it, dig for it, whatever the case may be.
Mr. Phillips, 17.
17 committees.
That's it?
There's more.
Sure feels like more.
Small, there's little, you know, here and there, but that's for the ad hoc too.
Excellent. Is that the right number?
I don't know if it's too many. Anybody else got it?
17 that I would say is every month. So there's actually other ones that Mr. Redwood goes to, the library board.
If you have fewer committees, you might have each committee having more than one department to deal with.
Yeah, I went through this in particular in Richland County at the beginning of this year, and they reduced down to, I think it's 5 committees. But to that point, they had, for example, land conservation, zoning, all of that in one committee. They had human services, health, their nursing home, one committee. So yes, it was multiple responsibilities housed in that one committee.
Any more questions? Anything? Anybody?
I just have a comment, I'm new to the committee too, as a lot of us are, and, and this is just me looking, so please don't throw anything at me, I'm too old to duck. But we get way too far into operational issues instead of oversight issues. And it really clogs things up. Anyway. We second guess people all the time, and that's just really, not only is it not our role, but, it minimizes why we hire them.
And I think if you look back at that bulleted list of what do we have, where we fail to distinguish between policy, that's on that list.
The one on the bottom.
Yeah, it's on the list.
It's on the list.
So you're gonna know where this is coming from. So the county administrator, assistant or county executive for that matter, is a strong executive, one employee concept.
Correct.
And the board acts not just as a legislative body, but as a policy making body. You're familiar, I'm sure, because you and I worked on this before, with policy governance. And under a policy governance model, which I happen to subscribe to, in addition to operational policies or personnel policies and financial policies, you have policy, management limitations policy. So when you give authority to individuals to make decisions, you have that accompanying set of policies that determine what the board's wishes are as to how they carry out their responsibility. And I would never be in favor of moving in the direction of a county administrator until and unless the board produces that set of management limitations policies, as well as you're familiar with board and administrative relationship policies. And without that, I think we have just as much confusion as we have right now, in my opinion.
No, and I don't disagree with you, and I went through that a lot back in the day. And it was always discussed as we have policy limitations that are placed upon, in that case, it was the executive. And the executive is going to act within the guardrails or parameters established through policy. Because at some point, we are gonna be 100% comfortable with whatever decision is made, so long as the policies are followed. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a purchasing policy on the books in Rusk County that says that no purchase worth over $5,000 is going to be made unless it goes out and you solicit at least 3 competitive proposals for whatever it is that you're purchasing. Well, if it's a $7,000 item and whoever's in charge of purchasing goes out and gets 3 competitive bids, bids come in, evaluate those bids, award the bid $7,000, the board should be happy because your policy said that you're gonna bid it if it's over $5,000. The problem comes in is if you have a committee or the board itself interjecting and saying, well, I wouldn't have done it that way. I actually would have gone out and gotten 4 bids, or I would have evaluated those bids differently. I would have placed different weight on the evaluation factors that are there. And so, in other words, you have the board or a committee doing the job of administration in evaluating the bids, when all the policy says is to go out and get competitive bids. And so you're absolutely right. You establish policies, and then whoever is responsible for implementation of those policies is free to implement within the boundaries established by the policies themselves.
That's all well and good, but we do that, some of that, and then we come back and say, why did you do that?
Yes.
More than once.
More than once.
That seems to be a circle around here. It's not at the committee level, we bring it to the board, and we sit here and discuss it for 9 hours and send it back. So I don't know, sometimes I question why we have committees. When we make decisions at the committee level, it's our job to do that, or vet it out, everything possibly we can. And then bring it to the board, already vet it. But yes, we will still bring it back up at the board level and discuss it for another 5 hours. So why do we have committees? That's one of my biggest questions.
But management limitations policies are more than just, you have to have bids. I mean, it would be, there would be policies that determine, what bids you cannot accept or what bids you have. So if one of those bids is from your brother-in-law, maybe,
right.
Or I think going back in the old days, we had a policy about, and personnel policy was that while the executive had the authority to hire employees, they were not permitted by, management limitation policy was they couldn't hire someone and pay them more or less than the standard established amount. Or if we give that person the authority to hire and they have some discretion as to whether, let's just say we have a 4-year degree and 3 years of experience, and they get an applicant that looks pretty good, but he only has a 4-year degree and 2 years of experience, do we have a policy that says they can make exceptions to the, and how
does that work?
How do you, yeah.
I mean, one of the great examples of the management limitation policies are personnel policies. You have to administer personnel consistent with personnel policies this board establishes. You don't delegate the authority to hire, fire, discipline, and so on in a manner inconsistent with your personnel policies. Those are management limitations. You have to follow our personnel policies in making those decisions. My question is, do we have consistent administration of those policies throughout the county? Because it wasn't clear to me who's even making those decisions. In some areas, it appears your administrative coordinator is supposed to be making those decisions at the direction of your board chair. And in other places, it looks like each independent committee, if there are 17 of them, perhaps we have 17 different committees making those types of decisions, sometimes in consultation with the personnel committee, but not always. And I'm not clear, it's unclear to me, in other words, when the personnel committee needs to be consulted in this decision. So
We send it to the committees, and we don't know enough about it, or, we don't think we know the finances that would be possible to do this. We just send it to the personnel or finance, get opinions.
Yes, sir.
So, and I'm not doing this to pick on anybody, but I don't know how this board's gonna move in the direction that I'm getting from you that would be a good idea for us to streamline things. When, for example, we had some policies come through to change in the handbook from personnel a couple months ago. The past personnel came to the board. There was some discussion, folks didn't like them, got tabled for a month. If I'm saying that correctly, to the next month. Next month, we're gonna discuss them again, and instead they get motions made where they get indefinitely postponed. And things like that really frustrate me, because you're trying to move policies in the right direction, and now they just got thrown in the trash. And you can't even discuss them anymore, unless you start all back over from scratch. And I just don't see how this board's gonna ever move in the right direction if that's gonna be the mindset going forward.
And my perspective, I don't know what the right direction is, that's up to you all. I don't know that anybody, I don't know if there's consensus around this room that we know what the right direction is. But where I've seen success is where we have either a designated committee or an ad hoc committee that is tasked with exploring and answering these questions. In other words, the board says, look, I want to know more about organizational form. I want to know what are the pros and cons of administrative form. What are the pros and cons of administrative coordinator? What do other counties do that we all would view as having success in the relationship between board and administrative coordinator? What does the position description look like? What should it look like? And then that ad hoc committee does all of the legwork in gathering information, and comes back to the board with a recommendation. The board is free to disregard that recommendation, but the board ought to have faith that whoever was tasked with gathering the information did their job. All right, so it's gotta be people that the board has faith and confidence are going to do their job to investigate these organizational options and come back with an informed recommendation to this board. This is important stuff. This isn't trivial stuff. What we're trying to do is set ourselves up for lasting success. This isn't a one-off, lasting success. And so it's a lot of work to put that together, and that committee's gonna have a lot of work to do. And this board ought to have faith that the committee's actually going to do the work. Now, it sounds a bit daunting and time intensive, but I will tell you that Sarah and I have both been through this process with numerous counties. Sometimes it goes smooth, sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. The point is, though, is that you're not alone in this, that it's WCA's mission to assist counties through this process. So whatever resources we can help you gather, we're happy to help you gather those resources. But first, we need a commitment from the board to say, we really wanna look at this. If you don't wanna look at this and everything is working fine, that's okay too. But if you're going to go down this path of looking at different options, we are happy to help you on that journey. And we've got all sorts of resources that we would be happy to share with, whether it's the full board, an ad hoc committee, or a particular committee of this board. Just by the way, just so I can further define that, how long were we at this with Trumbull County? 6 months?
6, 7 months. I want
6
to
or 7
say.
months, right? And so by the next time we come back to a board meeting and have the discussion about the recommendation, it will be warm outside, and that would be perfect. That would be just fine.
So on the 17th, are we talking about the relationship between the committees and the full board? Isn't that what's on
That's what the
next
board rules.
agenda? So isn't that what the current concern is that you brought up, or?
I will tell you again, just based on my personal experience, understanding the relationship between administration and the board comes first. Then we define what the committees do. Because whatever that decision is, that is going to be very important to defining what the committees are. So again, based on my experience, we talk about administrative form, then we talk about committee structure.
That's kind of my question, I guess, is where do we actually stand on the administrative coordinator side, based on her job description? It's kind of wide open. Correct on thinking.
I was hoping you'd tell me.
Well, it does, it looks like to me, but in essence, everybody runs to her or whoever and dictates what she needs to do. But some of the stuff that's thrown at her is not in her job description. So what is her job? I guess
That's
I'm
for you
asking
all
the
to
board
decide
here
then.
too, what is actually her job? Because it's a wide open door. And when something goes sideways, she catches the heat. If something goes right, she doesn't get commended for it, or pat on the back for it, we just keep throwing her under the bus.
I'd like to reply to that. Who should we go to? Who should be making the?
Very good question, because we had nobody, nobody.
That's
nobody
right,
is
we
in
have
charge of this
nobody.
town, myself included. I'm just a guy up here that carries the title chairman with me, but I'm still part of this body. I can't make any decision without this body, neither can anybody else.
So this county needs to change.
Absolutely.
The way we do things.
Absolutely.
We're coming on a new year, we should get going on it.
It's time to look forward and not backwards. And I have had many conversations with Mr. Phillips and Sarah. And I'm frustrated. I'm out of answers, I'm out of places to go.
And I
so-
think that would help with our public, with our people that live here. I think that definitely would help their feelings too, if we had somebody, I don't think we can put it on her. We need somebody that we can go to.
There's nobody to put it on there. There's nobody in charge of this county. If everybody gets that, really, there's nobody in charge. Am I correct on saying that way?
I think that's, I don't know the day-to-day operations within the county, but based on what I'm hearing, that's a fair assessment.
I know it's not gonna be easy to do, but they can help us do it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I reached out to them. We've got the experience, I've talked to other chairmen in the county, and they've done great things for the other counties. Right, wrong, otherwise, we don't have to agree with everything, but that's why we do this as a starting point. Get something in place and get looking at it.
That's all right, it's awkward silence. Everybody's thinking.
I'm just trying to think.
Oh, see, he's using the regular rules of procedure, Mr. Chair. He should be applauded for that.
By using his talent. But go ahead, Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, just a comment, it seems like there's a lot of work to go to get to the administrator, and that's not necessarily, something that would happen tomorrow, but along the lines of there being a lot of confusion about an administrative coordinator right now, what exactly is her role? Because I can go up there and say, I would like you to do this. Might not be in her job description. She might choose, this is a project I like, this one I don't like. But who am I to say otherwise? Her job description's pretty vague. Maybe we should start with defining that job description a little bit more. And in the future, once we get that settled, at least that could take care of a lot of issues. Down the road, we could look at administrator, but I think right now, this would be an easy step to clearly define what do we expect from our administrative coordinator, so she's not put in a tough spot. And I don't get frustrated because there's a disconnect, right? So just a thought that maybe the route we should go is starting off by making, I've seen that, it's like, agenda here.
Yeah,
move
Here,
us
I will
forward.
offer my personal opinion on this. In the industry, we call that a really freaking good idea. Personal opinion.
I want that in the minutes.
I would think it's a good idea that MSCA can kind of guide us or help us with some things correctly.
Absolutely.
Plus with the board's input.
Absolutely, and I think when we establish that, it's more than a job description. It speaks to the relationship between this board and your administrative coordinator, the committees and the administrative coordinator, the department heads and the departments with your administrative coordinator. It speaks to this concept of management limitations. What is it that we want our administrative coordinator to do? What do we want her not to do? And so I think having that type of policy document in place would go a long way to better defining roles and responsibilities in Rusk County. The administrator move, it's a big ticket item. I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. It's a big ticket item. Financially, to hire an administrator, it costs more money. To make the flip from administrative coordinator to administrator impacts a lot of the functioning within county government. I think that deserves exploration. You may ultimately decide we don't want to go there, and that's fine. But step one, in terms of defining the relationship between your current administrative coordinator, this board, the committees and staff, I think that's critical.
Under an administrative coordinator, the position has the authority that the board grants.
Correct.
So theoretically, the board could, on a step-by-step basis, make different areas of responsibility more like the county administrator, and not do it all in one swell swoop. You know, that would be one concept you could look at.
And I will say that you could create an administrative coordinator position that looks an awful lot like administrator right. There is no way that you can replicate the statute, because there are certain statutes that you can't adopt as county ordinance.
You could have a step-by-step implementation.
That's right.
Rather than doing it all at once.
That's
The other
right.
question that I have, and this has been frustrating for me, is when you have a question about how a decision is made, we don't really have a mechanism for the board to discuss that in a forum where, we don't like closed sessions. I think, the public doesn't like closed sessions. They're always wondering what we're doing. But there are times when you have questions that might be, controversial, or you wanna know why, or how a decision was made, or why something happened. And you'd rather have it in a closed, confidential manner. But we don't have a mechanism for that. We don't even have a mechanism for the public to bring anything to the board's attention that they might wanna see the board do. Because we limit public comment to items on the agenda. So if they have a brilliant idea about something the board could do, but it's not on the agenda, then they couldn't even tell us. So we need more opportunities to have those discussions.
And we can address that in the board rules if that's what the board decides to do. Absolutely.
So where do we kinda step from here to?
I think that in terms of next steps, again, it depends on if we have consensus from the board, and I understand that the agenda doesn't call for official action, so we're not going to create a committee tonight, that's not happening. But if there's consensus that the board wants to move forward with the assistance from WCA, from me, in evaluating the current job description for the administrative coordinator and better defining the relationship between an administrative coordinator, this board, committees, and staff, that Sarah and I gather resources and come back to either this board or a committee of the county board with information. So the question is this a full board discussion, or is this something that needs to be vetted at the committee level and brought back to the board as a set of recommendations about how we reform those policies?
Just a thought. One of the problems that I think we have is that maybe a committee studies an issue, looks at something, comes to the board with a resolution to do that. But they may have spent several meetings you know, hashing through alternatives, could do it this way, could do it that way, but when it gets to the board, we don't get obviously we can't have, you know, 8 hours of presentation, but we don't get any basic, you know, we're really asked to just approve a resolution because the committee thinks it's a good idea. You know, I don't think that's making an informed decision. So that we need a better way of communicating how the committee wants us to go and why and what our alternatives are. Because there might be more than one option and they're only giving us the one that they prefer. That makes sense?
It does, and it gets back to the point that I made about the board having faith in the work of the committee. And if it's a matter that the board says, you know what, this is a full board issue, it's gonna take longer. Okay, I get it, but maybe it needs to be a full board issue. That's up to you all as to how you wanna handle that.
I don't know where Mr. Rowan is going with that train of thought. And again, why do we have committees if we're gonna question everything a committee does? I guess I don't know why I'm sitting here then. I mean, I was voted in and I'm sitting on a committee to make decisions, the hard decisions, vet everything out, bring it to the board, and let it be done. But if the board's gonna question everything we do, what's the point of having a committee then?
I don't think the board questions everything, I just think they need to be more informed or whatever. I mean, almost need a policy as to when the committee should bring it to the full board. Right now, it's hit and miss, I think. We need some sort of policy to direct the committees, you know, when do we take this to the full board, when do we not? Just my opinion.
I think you have that policy on the books that says the committees are empowered to make certain decisions without board approval, but you can always change those policies. And again, respectfully, when it comes to operational issues, I don't know why we would even have committee involvement. I think that's a matter for administration.
Mr. Chairman, so if an issue does come out of a committee and goes to the board, at that point, you would say it becomes a board matter, correct? You're not saying if the committee brings a resolution to the board, automatically vote yes on every single one of those?
Absolutely not, no. It comes with a recommendation, not a mandatory action. You're
And you hope
absolutely
that they did their research and you can ask questions, hey, this is, the research we done and this is why we came to that conclusion. And I think a lot of times after asking questions to the committee, the board comes to the same conclusion, but I do think understanding what you're voting on would be important so you can be able to communicate your decision as to why you made it to your constituents. And I wouldn't say that you're at all recommending just understanding when it comes to the board.
Absolutely not, you can't. That's not your law.
Have you seen other counties where maybe, I'm just spitballing here, they bring something to the main board from their committee? Do they have like a designated spokesperson, like chair? I mean, we've had something where maybe the department head explains it, a lot of times Ms. Heath explains it. I'm wondering if a person maybe in that process streamlined it, and said either that committee chair is gonna explain this and present it to the board. Maybe that would give the board some more clarification and explanation as to how they came about that.
What I've typically seen is that the committee chair is responsible for the introduction of a resolution, and in that introduction provides some background about the resolution itself. And then the board is obviously free to ask the committee chair questions. Many times the department head is available to answer questions as well, but it's the committee chair that acts as the designated spokesperson.
Who currently is on the Health and Human Services Board? I would say my tenure on the Health and Human Services Board, we got more information and better information on that board than any other committee I've ever served on.
if the director had a change that he wanted to make, we got a full presentation of how we've been doing it, why we think we should do it this way, this is what it's gonna cost, this is what we recommend. I think a lot of our committees could learn, from that perspective. I think even on budget items, that committee is very well informed.
So is it the consensus to have the CA really help us out with the fact of administrative coordinator roles in place? How can we go about?
Well, the question is the committee gonna handle this function, or is it a full board conversation? Whatever the choice, we would want some designated person to have a discussion with following this meeting to say, okay, what kind of information can we put together, what do you wanna see? And then I would say that there are a couple of meetings where the information is evaluated, presented and evaluated. And then ultimately, the committee would make that recommendation back to the board of, these are the policies, this is the job description, here are the ordinances that we ought to see, we think ought to be amended. And then it's up to the board to consider adoption of those various items.
So what does the board think, I guess? Any ideas?
I think we need to proceed with this. I mean,
Is there anybody in particular we should probably point or put in place to, I see it out there, sorry, to correspond with, to look at the moving? Like personnel committee, we can't make no decision, but give us some extra,
I didn't hear everything you said, but I think I had
I'm
something
getting
to do
tired, I'm
with
starting
what
to
I,
go down.
what I was gonna say. What committee would we ask to get all this information from them?
That's what I'm asking the board right now.
Okay, that was my question.
Yep, that's what I'm asking the whole board, what's their sense of direction there?
if we go with what we have for a standing committee, if we're going to define what the administrative coordinator role is going to be first, in my mind, the personnel committee would be the committee to start with. They would get that ball rolling.
Everybody pretty good with that? Mike? You're the chair, so you're gonna be the head man.
Okay, I'm okay with that. Been down that road before.
We can coordinate through Ms. Heath to get information back. And so I think that.
I think it should be an ad hoc committee.
I think that when we look at the next steps, we've got county board rules on the agenda, and we know that's something that we need to address. But I think that the county board rules discussion can happen after we get through the administrative coordinator discussion. So again, I would think that we look at board rules as step 2, once we get through step 1. Again, I know we're set up on the 17th to have a discussion about board rules, but I think we postpone that discussion until we get through the administrative coordinator discussion.
I'm good with that.
And I'm just gonna put this out there too, that, whether it's an ad hoc committee, a standing committee, the county board, or for that matter, the full board members have the ability to attend these meetings. They don't have the right to participate, but they can attend to make sure that they understand what the committee is looking at and considering when it comes to making this recommendation. So I'm just putting that out there.
I do that, I think that quite a bit. You're not listening. Well, is there any other questions?
You
or
have
anything
rules
anybody-
now.
Anybody can answer for us while he's here?
We don't have the rules, we're not gonna discuss
No,
that.
I mean, do we have rules currently?
You have some rules on the books, yes.
How many of us know what they are? Number one, and number two, how many of us know whether they're being followed or not?
Great question.
And question 3, if we don't, where can we find them?
In your orientation packet you got in April.
Yeah. But what do you do when you think a rule is not being followed?
Ask our council.
Ethics committee too.
Otherwise, we'll put it up there in stone.
Yeah, that too. Hopefully he'll answer.
Go to ethics committee, you'll have to rewrite the ethics rules, so.
Ethics committee should meet.
Read the ethics rules for what the ethics committee can do. and all that.
Maybe the ethics committee isn't meeting enough and we should put this all on their plate.
So we have consensus? So let me ask this question. Is everybody here excited about this?
Can't hardly wait.
I feel the excitement, I really do. Honestly, this is a big first step, just admitting that this is something we ought to look at, because it's not a small undertaking, and I know you all have busy lives outside of your service to Rusk County. Adding on the service to Rusk County, adding on this whole question of, well, how are we gonna organize ourselves? That's a daunting task. You're not alone, other counties have done this. WCA and me, we're here to help, and so whenever you wanna have the discussion about, we need some help with this, reach out to WCA, that's why the organization exists, is to make sure that the members get the service and help that they deserve and need. So you're not in this alone, and I want everybody to be excited about this, a big first step.
It is, actually, I cannot remember what chairman I was talking to, but when they started that process, they put their foot in the dirt and they were holding it pretty tight. Now, since I talked to them then and now I've talked to them, that's best thing they ever did. Because they were running on dinosaur rules way back when, and they updated everything, and the system runs much, much smoother. Based on what you and Sarah have worked on.
We can assist with the process, we can't guarantee a result, but you'll find that if you go through the process, that's our experience as well, that folks that went through it come out on the other side saying, this is awesome, we're so glad we did this. Well worth the investment.
Go ahead, Mike.
So when I look at this and getting to your point of doing this sort of overarching thing, we had 17 committees. So in previous lifetime, we would call those functional silos. So we have 17 functional silos right now. If we could even cut that in half, that would be a huge step forward.
And when we get to the rules question, where we talk about committee structure, I can share with you what some other counties have done. And again, it was no easy task, but you'll have examples in front of you of, oh, if we did it this way, that's what it would look like. So absolutely, then you eliminate those functional silos, because there's much more cross-representation among the various different departments within county government. So I agree with you, you don't want functional silos.
No, we don't.
Any other questions?
Awesome, thank you all very much, great seeing you again. Look forward to working with you all, I find it fun. Some people call me demented, but I find this fun.
You could be demented and still be fun.
It is exciting, thank you. Heard it. I heard one person excited, John.
We're gonna change for the people.
I love it. Thank you all very much.
All right, thank you, Andy. And Sarah for coming all the way up here.
I moved.
Motion by Jim Meyer, second by Brian Taylor.
I was moving, but not fast enough. I would be close.
Reset. All in favor, say aye. Come on.
We've already decided.